welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from today. My name is Joe Andrews, Chief Marketing Officer at SupportLogic, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Karan Sood, Chief Product Officer. Welcome, Karan.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for inviting me.
So glad to have you here. We are talking today about a really important topic, generative AI solutions for complex support. And we are talking about how companies are getting real value from that today. And I'm really excited about this conversation. You and I have spent a lot of time talking about building, delivering solutions. And so we have some great insights to share. I think collectively, you and I have spoken with hundreds and hundreds of customers, companies in the market, people who are facing some of the challenges in looking at generative AI and the broader set of AI solutions today to help them out. So before we get started, I just want to go over a couple of administrative things. If this is your first time joining a SupportLogic webinar event using the Goldcast platform, you'll notice the controls on the right. We have a chat dialogue going. We have Q&A. So anytime during the webinar, please enter your questions. We will get to them if it makes sense at the time or at the end. And then we have some docs available, some resources in the docs section that you can check out. So we will come back to that, and we will do a couple of polls as well during the event to fit the conversation. So why don't we kick off, starting with a little fun word cloud. There are a lot of terms out there being thrown about. These are some of the most popular at the moment. And two of them that really pop into focus are GenAI and LLM. And we're going to spend a lot of time focused on those things today. I want to start with, I think everyone here is familiar with the Gartner hype cycle. We are at the peak right now for generative AI on the hype cycle. Just as a background, Gartner plots new technologies across the cycle, and there's sort of a hype that happens where you see the peak, and then you enter after that this trough of disillusionment when companies sort of have skepticism and are facing the realities of these new technologies before you enter this period of normalcy they call the plateau. And it's really been a year, maybe a year and a quarter since ChatGPT 3.5 came out. And just a year ago, we were having conversations and it was brand new. People were sort of thinking about it, not really sure what to make of it. We were all sort of testing it in our personal lives. But the question of how does this apply to business and how does this apply to enterprise business? And in our case, the world of post-sales customer experience, those questions all have been surfaced in the last year. And we're making some great headway. We're going to dive into that today. But it is hyped. It currently is in a hype cycle.
And Joe, I think we have all seen hype cycles for the different technology projects in the past years. And there's always, a day of reckoning, so to say, right? However, I feel this technology provides such a step function improvement in making the enterprise workflows so much better. And that's, a contributing factor to the growing popularity and also the inflated expectations, I would say.
Yeah, well said. And to complement that hype stage that we're in, I think it's fair to say that the data shows clearly the opportunity and impact will be incredibly large. Just a couple of stats here. This first one from BCG, if you think about all of the hours per year worldwide, 14 billion that customers spend contacting service, I tried to imagine what that's like. It's like taking every person in the United States and having them spend a full work week entirely on the phone with service or contacting them. Tremendous amount of surface area, so to speak, to attack with solutions that help that problem set. You see the massive trillions contribution to the global economy. There's always a conversation around or concern raised around, hey, will jobs go away? We know with any disruptive technology, jobs do go away, but many more jobs in this case are believed to will be created as a result. So it's about shifting the skill sets, and we'll come back to that skill set. And then there's a strong correlation with CX leaders. Many of you on the session today are in this space, believe that there's a correlation to success in post-sales customer experience with AI solutions.
I agree with everything that you said, Joe. And I think, I know, AI replacing jobs is a sensitive topic, but a statement, from a Harvard professor that once stuck with me is AI won't replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI. That's such a profound thought, actually. And I think that's going to be a theme of, what we're going to be talking about today, the impact that this technology can actually make in the enterprise context, in the enterprise workflows, is going to be, I think, completely transformational.
Totally agree. One more thing to share is that we've seen in just the last 6 months that the perception of GenAI has dramatically shifted among the C-suite. And we're seeing now what we're calling this tailwind of demand, where companies are looking to deploy AI and generative AI specifically in the enterprise, and looking for where are the best opportunities to do that. And just fall of last year, there was a big concern from the C-suite about adoption, because they didn't fully understand it, they didn't understand the implications, and they were not supporting its rollout. And today they are the key supporters, right? 2 and 3 are saying it's going to be the most disruptive technology in the next 5 years. And fully a third are saying they're already increasing their investments due to the emergence. So that's a big shift. Now, it's still perception, right? Reality has a long tailwind to go. I know, I come from the cloud infrastructure space previously. We talked about cloud, 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and it's taken a long time to get to cloud. So this will be a long journey. I think, someone famously said that in business, we tend to overestimate the short-term benefits or changes of a new technology, and we underestimate the long-term. So I think that's definitely clear here as well. So Karan, first sort of basic setup question is, and I'm sure a lot of people here are wondering this, or maybe have different points of view, but how should we think about generative AI compared to large language models, LLMs?
Love it. Love that we are starting with the very basics, Joe. And I'll keep it simple to begin with, because we're going to go into the details, as we progress in the webinar. So generative AI is, for me, a subset of the broader AI technology that excels in content generation are. And that content could be text, it could be images, videos, code, music. LLMs are a further subset of generative AI that essentially use deep learning algorithms and are tailored to perform language-related tasks, such as text generation, language translation, natural language understanding, and text analysis. So I would say generative AI being a subset of the broader AI, and LLMs being a further subset of GenAI, tailored for performing language-related tasks.
Great. I think that's a perfect setup. And we're going to be talking about both interchangeably, but it's helpful to understand how they fit together as a starting point. So let's go deeper and deeper. Another question that people will have is about the maturity of LLMs. And this is a little bit of an eye chart, but I thought this was useful context to show just how quickly that curve has risen to the upper right in the last few years of computational evolution around the LLMs. And so curious to get your thoughts here, Karan.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt, Joe, that the technology has evolved very rapidly. I would say in the last 6 to 12 months, every new week, a new foundational model is being announced. The joke was every time OpenAI has a demo day, they kill a few hundred startups or reset a few thousand roadmaps at least, right? Also, another measure of maturity, at least from my perspective, is GPT 3.5 that was announced, I think, sometime in November of 2023. It had SAT score of 1260. GPT 4.0, which was announced just 6 months later, had a score of 1410. That's a 150-point increment in just over 6 months. And of course, GPT 4.0 had so many more capabilities. For example, it became multimodal. So I would say on the technology side, it actually has been evolving very, very fast. The second element to this is actually also, as you pointed out earlier, on the adoption side. Now, almost all companies that we speak to are, I would say, exploring usage of large language models in some ways. 2023, in some ways, was a year of pilot projects for a lot of companies. And 2024 is the year when a lot of the same companies are now rolling out their first projects in a production cycle kind of a setting, right? So I would say definitely the technology is maturing, as well as the adoption of the technologies is maturing as well. And on the adoption side, I would say, in my opinion, one of the reasons why that has happened is because of the growing awareness and the understanding of the different levels of sophistications when it comes to implementing a large language model. You can start with the crawl phase of, just creating a wrapper around a foundational LLM, to, let's say, the next step being, influencing the output of the model using prompt engineering or techniques like RAG, to the advanced stage, for example, being completely building, fine-tuning, and running your own model, right? So I think a lot of these different elements from an education and awareness perspective have also eased the adoption, because people have understood that we can crawl, walk, and run, and don't go to the final stage at the very beginning.
That's a profound point I think you just made, which is there are really two vectors to this. It's not just the computational power and the advancements of the technological capabilities themselves, but it's also addressing the ease of use, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And you can't have one without the other to drive success.
Exactly.
I think another question that often comes up is public versus private LLMs, right? We're all familiar personally with any of the public LLMs where we're performing content generation tasks and asks, and it's pulling from the large public corpus. The enterprise side has some concerns, which we'll get to a little later. But let's talk about how we should think about them differently, and also how to think about that crawl, walk, run that you just mentioned.
Exactly. So as I was saying, I think there are different levels of sophistication when it comes to how you could implement large language models. Now, there are maybe 3 to 5 different ways, but let's say, to keep it simple, the beginner mode for me is basically just a wrapper around a foundational LLM model. Now, that may, in certain enterprise use cases, be enough. But at least from what we found out talking to a lot of our customers, just a basic foundational model that is just trained on any public data is never going to be sufficient. So the next level up from there, let's call it, the intermediate mode, is when you provide certain instructions and context through something that we call as prompt engineering. So you have a better control over the model output. And this could be in terms of the formatting, it could be in terms of the style. And when we'll talk about a couple of use cases, for example, case summarization further down in our presentation, we will go deeper on this. But let's say you have the foundational model. The next step up from there is, you use prompt engineering to influence the output of the model. The next level up from there could be, there are techniques that you can use. For example, one of the most common ones is retrieval augmented generation, RAG, where you could add your knowledge and data context to the model. So you can use your own proprietary data and train the model so that the output is restricted to the context that you've provided to the model, right? That's the next level of sophistication. And then I would say the level up from that, let's call it the advanced mode for me, is when you essentially build, fine-tune, run, and probably even orchestrate a series of your own custom private LLM models. So these are, for me, at a very high level, the different levels of sophistication. And for the different use cases, one or the other may have to be chosen. And of course, there are advantages and disadvantages with each of the approaches.
Thank you, Karan. So can we walk through the trade-offs a little bit on each side? I know there are bullets here kind of highlighting it, but how should we think about it? Maybe if you start with phase one, phase two.
Yeah, I would say, there are a few different vectors. There is, for example, customization and flexibility. There is scalability and performance. Also, in certain regulated industries, privacy and security is more important than certain other industries. And then, of course, on the other end of the spectrum, there is always cost to development. There is the cost to integration. So from my perspective, I would say things that, or the factors that kind of favor a private LLM, for example, are when you need extreme customization and flexibility. And this is because public LLMs kind of come with predefined architecture and parameters, limiting the customization options. And in contrast, the private LLMs offer the organizations the flexibility to tailor the models according to their specific needs, incorporating even domain-specific knowledge and fine-tuning the parameters specifically for a particular use case. So I would say for the use cases and organizations where customization and flexibility is the most important thing, maybe phase 3 or phase 4 is the way to go. Mm-hmm. Same with scalability and performance. I would say private LLMs, can be optimized for scalability that can be tailored to the specific workload requirements of the use case. So again, if scalability and performance for a particular use case or for a particular organization is the key, maybe phase 3 and 4 are kind of more important. On the other end, with how fast the technology is evolving, every new week a new foundational model being announced, developing and maintaining private LLMs can be actually very resource intensive, requiring significant investment in research, in infrastructure, and talent. So I would say it's not a one size fits all. You do not always need phase 3 and phase 4 for all use cases. Maybe in certain cases, just a foundational model, a wrapper around it with prompt engineering, which is phase 1 and phase 2, probably is going to be good enough. So I think in the end, it all depends on, for the different considerations that you may have, depending on the use case. And the use case could also be specific to each customer. You may have to choose whether you use, a public SLM or public LLM with, I would say, a little bit of prompt engineering, or go slightly more advanced, which is then going towards the direction of fine-tuning and private LLMs.
Thank you for unpacking that, Karan. So I would just want to say for everyone who's joining us, there's complexity, and we love having these conversations with folks like yourselves who are joining about considering different paths. And as you've heard, it's very nuanced depending on your own situation. So we would love to have follow-up conversations with you about where you are and what are you trying to achieve, and figure out the best path to do that. It's a great segue into SupportLogic's approach and how we differentiate with our own generative AI solution. So there's kind of 4 key areas around this: infrastructure and security on sort of the outer perimeter, and then domain deep support and post-sales CX domain expertise, and then our ability to fine-tune the models. But let's dive into that a little bit, Karan.
Absolutely. I mean, first and foremost, since there is, as we discussed, there is no one large language model that will solve for all enterprise use cases. So what we have done as SupportLogic is we've invested massively in building, I would say, a robust LLM infrastructure that combines public LLMs, private small language models and private large language models. And we can seamlessly switch between several public LLMs and soon to be announced private LLMs as well for the different use cases. So I would say first, the way we differentiate is because of the infrastructure that we've created around the technology piece itself. Secondly, I would say we have tons of domain expertise within SupportLogic, both on the technology side as well as on the support domain side. And this is extremely important in my opinion. As we said, as new foundational models and domain-specific models are announced every week, we have a dedicated team of ML engineers that are continuously evaluating them. And if someone wants to build a private LLM from scratch, you will need a dedicated team of ML engineers to research them, to test them, to build them, to train them, to deploy them. And that requires a lot of deep expertise and ML resources. And on the domain expertise side as well, we take the burden off you. For example, we were talking about prompt engineering. It's extremely important to pass the right context and instructions to a foundational LLM model to get the desired output. The best example that I have for this one is, one of the use cases that we do is case summarization. Now, there is never going to be one case summarization which is going to be, best for every user persona. Think about if it is a case summarization for a handoff from one agent to the other, the focus has to be on the most recent events on the case, what are the immediate next steps. Whereas if the user persona is a support manager, then the case summary has to focus more on what has happened on the case from the time it actually was logged, who are the people that were involved, and for a support manager, recommendations on what the swarming team should look like. Whereas if the case summarization is for an executive, maybe there, the focus is a little bit more on what's the overall sentiment on the case and at an account level. Now, this requires different kind of prompt engineering that could be needed for the different user personas. And that's something that SupportLogic has been doing for many, many years. All of us are, domain experts in the support domain. So I would say the second level of differentiation is because of the domain expertise that we bring to the table. Third, I would say, as you go up the level of sophistication in terms of the implementation, we are also able to use techniques like retrieval augmented generation RAG to train models on customers' proprietary data. And we can also actually fine-tune the deeper layers of the models by further training them on smaller and specific data sets that we can get from customers. So I would say leveling it up, even the fine-tuning is something that we can help do for our customers. And of course, last but not least, we take security very, very seriously. For all public LLMs, we use enterprise-level safeguards to protect the data from being stored in sub-processes, something that we've heard from our customers and prospects. And on top of that, we've also built an additional layer of redaction, which kind of removes all the personal information from the data that is being stored. So I would say across these four different vectors, there are certain things that we do that kind of take the burden of our customers, and they can rely on our expertise and the fact that we have dedicated engineers who do this on a full-time, full-day basis.
I would just add to that, if you look at our customers, and we'll show some later on, many of them are in the complex infrastructure and or security space, or in the data and application space where all of these requirements are critical. And it's because of the domain experience and our ability to do something for them that is not within their core competency that they've decided to partner with us. So we're very proud of that. And any concerns that you may have around any of these vectors, we're happy to dive into at a deeper level. So let's pivot a little bit and talk about the use cases. We have, as I said, we have a number of customers that are doing a whole bunch of amazing things. We also talk with, hundreds and hundreds of companies out there in the market. And this is what we hear they are prioritizing. And we would also love to hear, get your opinion. We have a poll that's opened up. So we have kind of three basic areas: the agent productivity side of it, the core support operations efficiency, and then quality monitoring and coaching. And we'll dive into a little bit of detail of those. But if you go to the poll, tell us what is top of mind for your priorities. We'll give that a few minutes. While people are doing that, we can dive in a little bit. So Karan, if you would, let's talk a little bit first about agent productivity. I think this is the one that companies we speak with first talk about, because that idea of using generative AI to create a response, to summarize the case, to deliver guidance on next best actions, et cetera. Let's talk a little bit about that and how the GenAI technologies are able to help with that.
Absolutely. And if I may take even a step back, Joe, I would say, we at SupportLogic have been doing AI from the time we started, especially predictive AI. We actually even started using technologies like BERT, I would say way back when it was launched in 2018, 2019. And this was, one of the first LLMs, way before, the hype that we've seen in the last 6 to 12 months. And at least at SupportLogic, we fundamentally believe that combining predictive AI with generative AI is the real game changer. So what you see on the slide from Joe is, of course, we will kind of dig deeper into the Gen AI use cases, but all the other things that we do with predictive AI combined with Gen AI for us is the real game changer.
Thank you for starting there. By the way, just to guide us, so we just closed the poll. About 50% have said their top area of priority is in this core support operations efficiency, 40% agent productivity, 10% quality monitoring coaching. So we'll cater our content accordingly.
Yeah. And I would say, when it comes to the Gen AI use cases, I personally like to use some kind of a taxonomic categories to kind of group even the different use cases, right? A few examples of these categories could be, Gen AI can help you summarize content. Gen AI can help you transform content. Gen AI can help you create new content, or it can help you retrieve content. So I think these are the broader categories. And within each of these categories, we have different use cases across the breadth of our product portfolio, as Joe, you were talking about. Now, for example, under the content summarization, we have use cases like case summarization and account summarization. And again, as I was mentioning, this could even be broken down into case summarization based on a specific user persona, case summarization for an agent, kind of going through the handover from one agent to the other being one of the use cases, versus case summarization for a support manager versus case summarization for an executive. On the content generation side, we have use cases like something that we plan to build in the second half of this year is knowledge article generation using Gen AI. For content transformation, we have use cases like translation assist, translating from one language to the other. Most of our customers are global customers that deal with cases coming to them in different languages. And even before we can do the sentiment detection on the case may have to be translated for the agent, for the support organization, let's say, into English. So I would say on the content transformation side, translation assist is one of the use cases that we support today. The other one is response assist, where, let's say, after the case has been summarized, also helping an agent or maybe even a support manager compose a response that could be sent out either internally or could be sent out directly to the customer as well. And then on the content retrieval side, we have use cases like troubleshoot assist, and something that we are currently working on is natural language powered analytics, where, for example, you can query our platform based on natural language instead of, pre-built charts coming from us to you. You could, on the fly, in real time, create your own chats using natural language. So these are, I would say, some of the examples.
I'm just going to expand it to some of the new capabilities coming as you're referencing them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anything to talk about on the core support operations efficiency side? Just we tend to think of that as sort of more of the summarization, retrieval, helping to guide workflow and providing, the analytics that help the entire operation get more efficient.
Exactly. And I think one of the other use cases that we are currently working on in our current releases, besides the case summarization, also summarizing based on all the post-sales interactions that we get into our platform, summarizing at an account or a customer level. And not just summarizing, actually, it could also be providing insights about, like for a case, there is a likelihood to escalate. There could also be a likelihood to churn on the account side. So some of the things that we are also planning to build in the second half of the year are kind of moving or kind of adding to our case-centric view to kind of also becoming more customer and account-centric and providing account churn insights or account summarization and stuff like that as well.
Fantastic. And for the people who joined us who are interested in quality monitoring and coaching, just a brief mention of that. I think there are some powerful use cases here, being able to automatically QA all customer interactions, right, against a rubric and against compliance standards based, in some industries that's very important, and being able to sort of surface back coaching insights and analytics that help not only your frontline agents, but the entire org get better. We've seen some powerful results here. So if that's something you're interested in, or if you have questions about that, feel free to add that into the Q&A.
And I would say, just to add to that one, Joe, I would say a lot of our customers are looking to move from, a very manual QA process to an automated process. And I would say through GenAI, you could completely reimagine, for example, the automatic QA process as well, where the scorecards and the automatic grading could happen based on or leveraging the GenAI technology. So I would say immense opportunities to kind of completely transform the auto QA process using GenAI as a technology.
Fantastic. All right, let's move ahead. One of the other topics that folks are interested in covering are the challenges, right? What is getting in the way of enterprise AI and LLM adoption? And let's go a little deep on these and talk about what they are and how to address them. Yeah.
So, Joe, I think even before the 5 categories that I mentioned here, I love the blog that you had where, you were talking about, it's for any technology, not even GenAI, it's important to define the problem first. GenAI could be a solution to some problems, but it should not be the end goal. In fact, misusing GenAI diminishes the value of AI in an organization, in my opinion. So getting the problem first is the most important thing. But specifically speaking about...
Sorry, Karan, just quickly mention the poll is open. We want to hear your opinion in the audience. What are the top challenges you're facing today? Pick up to 2.
Mm-hmm. All right. So specifically speaking about the GenAI challenges and the pitfalls from a technology perspective, personally, I would say, according to me, hallucination is one of the biggest ones that I've heard from our customers.
Mm-hmm.
One of the challenges with large language models is that they have a tendency to confidently bullshit or hallucinate stuff, right? I mean, hallucinations are essentially output that, while appearing plausible, are not based on factual information. And this becomes particularly significant in an enterprise context where accuracy and fact-based decision-making is paramount. And the principal challenge arises from the fact that these models, especially foundational public large language models, they're trained on massive data sets. That has an advantage because it kind of gives them the breadth, but they're often derived from the internet or extensive, text corpora. And if the source data encapsulates certain bias, the model will learn and possibly even magnify that bias, right? So I would say hallucination for me is one of the biggest challenges when adopting a technology like this. Of course, there are ways around it. For example, as we were talking about, using technologies like RAG, fine-tuning the large language model, are exactly to counter problems like hallucination. So I would say hallucination for me is one. Data complexity is the other one. Key to successful fine-tuning lies in the preparation and the pre-processing of the domain-specific data sets, which is critical to ensure compatibility with the model and with the task at hand, whatever is the use case. And this is where, as I was saying, at SupportLogic, we have the expertise to be able to deal with domain-specific data, to be able to train language models based on your proprietary data, so that we can, make the complexity of data a little bit easier for our customers. Third, I would say, is still in several organizations, not just in the regulated industries, but even generally across many customers, data privacy and security concerns are still all valid. Foundational LLM models are trained on massive amounts of public data. And for a large language model to become helpful in the enterprise context, they need to be retrained on proprietary data that may contain some sensitive personal data, financial information, or any confidential stuff, right? So to mitigate these concerns, enterprises must ensure that their data is adequately secured. There is redaction, if needed, is happening on all of that data. So I would say data privacy and security is definitely one of the other things. Skill gap, we talked about it in one of the earlier slides as well. On the technology side, new models are being announced every week. It's extremely difficult to keep pace with it unless you have a dedicated team of machine learning engineers and deciding which models are best suited for which use cases.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you also have the domain-specific models, and that expertise basically is also not very easy. And that skill gap, I would say, is one of the other challenges that I've seen, where just using a foundational large language model but not having then the expertise to fine-tune, or not having the domain expertise, does not give you the output that you were expecting for a particular use case. Now, this is not the problem with the technology. This is that you don't have the right skill sets that you need to apply on top of the technology to get the best out of it, right? So I would say those are some of the challenges that I can think of. Would be also interested to see, on the voting, which ones scored higher.
Yeah, so those just came in. Thanks, Karan. So the top vote getters were data privacy and security concerns, probably about 25%. That is top two. And then integration with existing systems and workflows.
I think this is I can talk about this one as well a little bit. I would say, like any other technology, GenAI is a solution and not the end goal. So before diving into the AI implementation, it's critical to first define the business problem that you're trying to solve for. And when we think of GenAI use cases at SupportLogic, we take a very user persona and a jobs to be done based approach. And we think about the end-to-end workflow. That way, whether it's predictive AI, whether it's generative AI, is not really an afterthought, but it is embedded into the core workflow itself. For example, we dog food our GenAI with our proprietary predictive AI to get more out of generative AI. So I would say integration of GenAI into the end-to-end workflow is extremely important as well.
Gotcha. Just want to state there's some questions coming in. Avi, you've got a couple in there. We're going to come back to those really soon. We have about 5 more minutes of content, and then we want to get to Q&A. So for others, if you have a question, please enter it in the Q&A. And let's move along. This is an important topic, though, is addressing these challenges. And just a couple of stats from a survey from IBM in terms of the propensity for the skills gap and the data complexity to be issues. It's pretty significant among concerns among IT leaders who are faced with deploying these solutions. Another question that comes up is, why deploy now? Right? We looked at this exponential curve of technology and computational improvements. Why not wait? Why should we deploy now?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite ones. I view GenAI as a fundamental shift in how we will deliver interfaces. This technology provides such a major step improvement in interface, making the enterprise workflows so much better compared to what it was without the technology, right? So it's on the same scale as, if not more, I would say World Wide Web three decades back, or mobile phones 2 decades back. Just like it was never a good advice to not go online and leverage the internet. In fact, the companies that aggressively embraced that change were the ones that actually succeeded. The same way, I would say it does not help to sit on the sidelines with this technology and wait for it to see how it plays out, right? Early adopters will be in a leadership position as well. And the earlier you get involved, the more you will learn, and the more it will put you in a better position as the technology evolves and develops.
Yeah. I would add one thing, Karan. So with previous technologies, there was, a major forklift sort of transformation, upgrade. There's a lot of the, infrastructure and foundation that needs to be built. And enterprises could not undertake these changes lightly, whether it was moving from on-prem deployments of applications to the cloud, et cetera. In this case, think of it as a sidecar. There are abilities to take advantage and deploy some of these use cases very quickly, like in, a month and a half, 45 days to deploy some of these use cases. And it's not negatively impacting your core operations. And, partners like SupportLogic would be doing the heavy lifting. And then you're able to get immediate results that help you inform the rest of your roadmap and in your plans. So it's sort of a parallel effort versus I need to make one big decision and then it's going to be a major move.
Mm-hmm. Wonderfully said, Joe. 100% agree.
Okay. So I want to come back to sort of the benefits. We've talked a lot about the use cases, the challenges, because we want to be very transparent and face those up front. But it's important to consider that whether you're looking at predictive AI solutions, which have been around from SupportLogic for a lot longer, or newer generative AI solutions, these benefits are very compelling across the organization, right? Whether it's the core support team, operations management, frontline agents, executives on the left, customer success, even the GTM functions, top center, or product and engineering, IT, BizOps, CXOs, finance. There are benefits that accrue company-wide. And one of the questions we always get is, which one should I prioritize? If I'm trying to make the business case, if I'm a support executive or customer success executive, how do I compete with corporate IT looking at, say, 14 different AI projects? And so this is one of the best ones that delivers value for post-CX. And we see that. I'm just going to show a few stats here. Across these vectors, from customer experience, right, in terms of reducing escalations, improving CSAT NPS, customer retention, removing friction, improving experience, and then operational efficiency, which is all about, better, faster, cheaper. And you see the results here. One of the customers that we're proud of and did a case study webinar a couple weeks ago with TSIA is Informatica. They were able to prioritize implementing SupportLogic, and this actually augmented a build initiative that they had going on for many years. And they brought us in because of the deep domain expertise, and they were able to very quickly reduce the overall number of cases, which removed the drag on their internal resources that they were able to redeploy to other initiatives in their portfolio of projects across post-sales CX. So all of these customer case studies are on our website. We would be happy to walk through them with you, but they're very compelling. So any final points, Karan? I want to show a couple of resources, and then we'll address some questions in the time that we have left.
No, nothing from my side, Joe. We can go to the resources and then the questions.
Fantastic. So one of the things that we're proud of at SupportLogic is we have been building over the last couple of years a community we call SX Live for Support Experience, and we do a series of events, and we have a lot of virtual content, as like the webinar that we're on now, where you can go and learn and you can contribute. So we encourage you to check that out as a resource for yourself. We are also doing a series of city tours across the US this year. We just completed 2 in Redmond together with Microsoft, and in Austin, Texas, and you see the upcoming calendar for that. So great way for you to network. These are not SupportLogic infomercials. These are conversations and panels with thought leaders and practitioners who are sharing their best practices, and it's a great way for you to learn. And then the other thing is, if you want to see more in terms of what we've done and see the actual product, we have several ways for you to do that. If you go to our website, you can request a one-on-one demo. You can join a weekly group demo we have every Friday. And then there's also an upcoming webinar where we're going to go deeper on what constitutes enterprise-grade AI for the category. Because as we saw, there's concern around privacy and security, rightfully so, and we're going to dive into that in addition to the other requirements that constitute enterprise-grade. So with that, want to open it up for some questions. Thanks and please enter if you haven't had a chance. So we're going to get to Avi, who had a couple questions first. When do you think RAG will be available in our GenAI models?
So Avi, we are working on this, and we are hoping for this to be available in the next 3 months. We are already doing some, I would say, internal pilots at this stage. The use case that we are starting with when it comes to RAG is the troubleshoot assist use case, where we're kind of trying to use this technology to help agents first troubleshoot the problem and find right solutions to the problem that have been described in the case. So that's the use case that we are starting with, and we're hoping for this to be available at least for our beta customers in the next 3 months.
And there's a follow-up as well from Holly on the RAG topic of, do you have any tips or resources about how to get started?
We are in the process of, since this is still not a generally available feature in our platform, we don't have extensive documentation as yet, but this is again something that we are working on, and we would absolutely love to share that with you as soon as that's going to be available. But yes, this is exactly in the works.
Great. And then another question from Avi: how are you measuring toxicity and bias in the GenAI sentiment analysis use cases?
So just to maybe understand, is it more in the more classical sentiment analysis itself? Because that probably is not even related to GenAI.
Yeah. Avi, if you could clarify in the comments or the Q&A, because sentiment analysis is typically the predictive AI technologies where we're mining all the signals, the unstructured data, and then organizing it and bringing the analytics front and center. So there is, bias and toxicity, I would say, is another word for a signal, which is, a customer is extremely frustrated or upset. And then bias is about sort of normalizing the data and bringing forth, predictions and assessments, level setting a customer sentiment based on their normal baseline, not the entire market. Correct me if I'm wrong, Karan.
No, that's absolutely accurate. And maybe, Avi, what we can also do is, if you could please drop in your contact details, we can also schedule a separate session with you where we can talk about, how, for example, do we measure accuracy and precision when it comes to detecting signals and the scores that we calculate. It's a deeper conversation, and we would love to have that with you.
Great. And a follow-up, well, Amar says, when will this feature be available? The last I heard was Q1. I think maybe the reference is to RAG, what you were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So just clarifying that.
Correct. So the RAG, I would say, as we said, it's in the works, internal pilots in the next 3 months. But some of the other use cases that do not use RAG, for example, case summarization, that we have already opened up for our beta customers. And we have a couple of customers already trying that out and working with us to kind of fine tune it for their use cases. So not everything is not available. It's only the RAG specific use cases that is planned in the next 3 months. A lot of the other things, translation assist, response assist, case summarization, these features are already available in the platform.
Fantastic. All right, last call. Any other questions?
I think
Lori.
Yeah.
How do you approach or pitch a prospect that is not on board with AI?
Why don't you take that, Joe, and I'll pitch in.
Yeah. So I think, Lori, we basically follow the framework of showing benefits and then understanding someone's objectives, right? The priorities, whether that's, on the operational side, getting more efficient with existing resources, improving the experience directly for end customers or for their internal agents. And as we showed kind of the 3-column set of use cases, all of those basically support those higher level business benefits in some form or another. And understanding where the prospect or customer's main objectives are, we can then quickly map them to the solutions and then talk about, here's where the AI technology can benefit them specifically. So that's definitely a starting point. Obviously, a lot more nuance as you're addressing, potentially concerns, the challenges that we talked about. But at the end of the day, any technology is about solving problems and use cases, better, faster, cheaper. And then it's inspiring confidence with those who are going to make that change.
Very well said, Joe.
All right. So final one, and then we have to wrap up from Amar. Okay, clarification about the question. It's about PII data. Will SupportLogic be able to detect PII and redact the PII?
Mm-hmm. Yes. So with our Q1 release, we have already, so if you're an existing customer, you may have already seen some release notes. We are introducing redaction already in Q1. This is also going to be an ongoing investment through the rest of the year. So we will add more capabilities, but basic redaction is already available with our Q1 release.
All right, we've reached the end. Fantastic session. Appreciate everyone's input on this. And Karan, you're a fantastic business partner, and I really enjoyed the conversation. You have so much knowledge to bring, and I really appreciate your time here today.
Likewise, Joe. It was my pleasure to be here with you.
Thanks, everyone. Please stay in touch. If you have follow-up questions, feel free to reach out, and we look forward to continuing the conversation. All right.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.